Good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 21, 2021. The time is 5 p.m. and the regular meeting of the following will come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council also sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the city as housing asset successor, Joint Powers Financing Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Becerra. Here. Councilmember Gomez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Present.
Mayor Jones.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a quorum. And now before we move on to the introduction to public comments, Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak on closed session items?
If we could just give it a moment, let's see if we have any
Sure.
speakers pop up.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing anything on my screen.
I have no speakers, Madam Mayor.
All right.
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
would also like to speak as a member of the public.
Yes, certainly. Member Gomez, you're happy to do that. And for the audience, Member Gomez is going to step down to the podium and speak as a member of the audience without the attendant rights or the color of authority of a council member. Welcome, Ms. Gomez.
So as a council member and right now speaking as a member of the public, I would like to address the directives to violation of CVRA. In 2003, shortly after enactment of the CVRA, veteran city attorney Margaret Leone warned municipalities against putting their electoral systems on the ballot since it may increase the risk to the jurisdiction by serving as persuasive proof of a violation of CVRA if the by-district system was rejected and an election characterized by a racially polarized vote. Notwithstanding this guidance in 2008, Victorville Charter not only specified at-large elections, Section 300, but contained an additional provision, Section 301, expressly prohibiting district elections without regards to change in the demographics and voting behavior. The charter also entrenched the city manager form of government. Although the prohibition of district elections may not have been the primary factors of the voters' decisions to approve the charter, it does not indicate the intent of the authors and the Anglo voters to entrench their influence in the face of a growing Latino electorate. In 2008, only 33% of eligible voters were Latino, as opposed to 47 in the most recent data, 2015-2019. The charter was approved in a special election at which Latino voters participated was especially low, only 19%, as opposed to 30% for Anglos. Almost 2/3 of Anglos voted for the charter. You may take pride in noting that the voters overwhelmingly supported continuingly with the at-large system when this issue was placed in the ballot in 2016. The unsurprising fact that the established majority bloc wants to retain winner takes all is not a defense. 71% of Latino voters supported district elections, but they were only 35% of the turnout. A 63% majority of non-Latino voters defeated the reform, entrenching their control of the entire council. As Ms. Milione warned, both of these attempts to preserve winner takes all provides compelling evidence that an at-large system is unlawful. Recent city council elections, your letter appears to be concede that there is an inference of racially polarized voting, but goes on to assert that it's not legally significant because minority preferred candidates are not usually being defeated. This is a wrong for two reasons. Under CVRA, dilution can be established exclusively based on the ballot questions without regards to council elections. Moreover, the elements require that minority candidates usually be defeated, sometimes called the Gingles two.
You have 30 seconds.
And you will notice that 5 Latino
Madam Clerk, I'm sorry.
were again defeated in 2020.
Member Gomez, I'm so sorry. Your time is not going to be taken. Did you say 1 minute or
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Member, Ms. Gomez.
Despite the Latino majority in voting age population, only one candidate that Latinos preferred, Blanca Gomez, was elected.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any other requests?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So the public comment period is now closed and the chair brings the item back to the council. Mr. DeBornowski, do you have any can you do the declarations of closed session items, please?
Yes, I do. We have one closed session item this evening. It is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2. And the facts and circumstances regarding that litigation are set forth on the agenda. To the extent there is reportable action, we will report it either at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the regular 6 o'clock session.
Thank you, Mr. DeBornowski. All right, we're now in recess to closed session. We will resume open session at 6 p.m. Huh? It says for you. Who's doing the presentation? Okay. But he'll lead all of that. Okay. Whatever they want to do, whatever will bless them.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm happy to. After the presentation's done, or do you want me to be down there? Okay. All right, well, good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 21, 2021. The time is 6:03 p.m. and we are resuming the regular session of our regular meeting, the following of which will come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council also sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the City is Housing Assets successor, Joint Powers Financing Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Becerra. Councilmember Gomez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Present.
Mayor Jones.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a quorum. All right, Mr. DeBornowski, do you have any closed session announcements to make?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jones. We had one item this evening, which was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2. The facts and circumstances relating to that are set forth on the agenda. At this time, there is no reportable action with respect to that item.
Thank you. All right, we're now going to move on to the invocation. Do we have Pastor Joseph Garibay of Calvary Chapel, Victorville? Welcome, sir. And following the invocation, we're going to have Captain John Wickham lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the most wonderful flag in the world. Pastor, welcome.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and pray.
Thank you.
Father, thank you for the opportunity that you have given me to pray here in front of the City Council of Victorville. Lord, I know in the book of Romans, it reads, everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. Therefore, because your word is truth, we thank you for placing each board member here this evening. We thank you for giving them a servant's heart to serve this city and its many residents within their jurisdiction. Lord, we ask for your guidance and presence to fill this room so that decisions can be made morally, justly, and unselfishly. Lord, be with everyone here that is listening, watching, and actively taking part in this meeting. Be with those here that will be addressing their concerns or thoughts regarding their city. Be with the City Council, and may your presence, the God of peace and order, fill this room. We thank you, Lord, and we pray this in Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Pastor. Will everyone please rise for the pledge to our flag? Thank you, Captain Wickham. And now this evening, we have special presentations that our Captain Wickham is going to present for us. And I'm going to go ahead and meet you down here. If Captain Wickham, you can meet with me, please.
Do you want me to get with the presentation, Mayor? Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. I'm here tonight. It's an honor to introduce some of the added staff to the Victorville City Station as a result of the Measure P, passing a Measure P. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce those folks. I'd like to start off with, so part of the Measure P added 11 personnel to the sheriff's station, 5 deputy sheriffs, 5 SSSs, which are the sheriff's service specialists, and 1 crime analyst. Today we have the 5 deputy sheriffs, and we just recently hired, and I'll start off with the crime analyst, who is Daylin Weinberg. Daylin, come on down. Daylin was recently promoted to analyst. She has been a member of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for over 20 years. She's been assigned to Victorville City Station for the past 13 years. Recently promoted again to the analyst position, where she's going to assist detectives, deputy sheriffs with investigation, identification of suspects, a whole realm of different things, including crime trends. So we're happy to bring Daylin on board, filling that position. The 5 deputy sheriffs added to the station with Measure P, Deputy Ethan Strubing,
He hasn't been able to control his items, so can you make sure? he
Deputy
makes
Jonathan
sure-
Fung, Deputy Damon Leon, Deputy Aiden Juarez, and Deputy Adam Gonzalez. In addition to the 5 deputy sheriffs and the analyst, that included the 5 sheriff service specialists. We currently have offered jobs. We're currently conducting interviews for those positions. 3 have accepted the positions, which start October 9th, so they're not with us tonight quite yet, and 2 have been offered job positions pending backgrounds. So with that, we have the 5 deputy sheriffs and crime analysts. We're gonna take the pictures or absolutely. And just a little background with the 5 deputy sheriffs. They attended San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department within the last 2 years. Were assigned to the correctional division within our department, and then recently assigned to the Victorville Station, where they undergo field training officer program, which would be anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks. And then they will be part of our full-time staff, adding to our patrol. And the idea behind it is we've all talked about, we know there's a lot of issues out there with traffic. And so we're excited about these deputies and adding them, getting them trained so we can really double the size of our traffic division and try to get a real measurable show of enforcement out there with the addition of the deputies, thanks to Measure P, and also with the county contributing some of the crime suppression monies that's helping dedicate some funding for additional traffic enforcement within the cities in the high desert. Recent added staff to the Victorville Station that I just real quick would like to introduce is Lieutenant Jacob Galt. Lieutenant Galt was recently promoted to the rank of lieutenant from sergeant. He was assigned to the training division, where I think he knows all of these deputy sheriffs that went through his academy program. Lieutenant Galt is from the Barstow area. We won't hold that against him, but we're happy to have him here in Victorville. So he's from the high desert. And addition to our staff is Amanda Paslick. She has been hired on as our public information officer. And our last one, added staff to the Victorville Station. As we know, we have a K-9 program at Victorville City. We had a K-9 Raider that recently retired, and with Raider's replacement, Deputy Joe Carroll has been assigned as our newest K-9 officer. Come on down, Joe. And his new K-9 Dutch Shepherd. And this, I'd like to introduce Nina. Nina's about 2 years old. Joe has been with the department for about 5 years. Joe and Nina have gone through extensive training recently. Nina is a tracking dog that can track suspects or missing persons. But one of the other key things we did with Nina is she's trained in detection of firearms. Okay. Joe, she's been in service or on the streets working since July. So since July, just a little background, in a very short time, Nina has been responsible for the recovery of over 50 firearms. Wow. As it relates to traffic stops, search warrants. So getting those 50 firearms in that short period of time is pretty remarkable, and a great asset to the station, to the community, and for public safety. You're welcome.
Welcome to you all, Lieutenant. Congratulations on your promotion. Being a PIO officer. It's everything that is in me to not just reach down and have this office. We're so happy to have you with us, and I hope you enjoy our great city. And we look forward to the great really enjoy our community. Thank you again. Spirited.
Any questions, Madam Mayor? Madam Mayor, any
Uh,
questions that I can answer?
No, no questions, but I have to tell you, this is a great day because we're seeing the fruits of Measure P, number one, but number two, it's really the an answer to the clarion call for many years to do better by our city in terms of preventing crime, dealing with crime, and traffic control. So we're so thankful that we've got this going, and I'm very confident that we're going to have these new additions doing great work for our city. So thank you. All right, moving on to proclamation, moving on to the presentation of the agenda and any revisions there too, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no revisions to the agenda.
Thank you. All right, council members, do any of you have any conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we're going to move on to public comments. And before I get into the introduction to public comments, Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right. So once again, welcome to tonight's meeting of the Victorville City Council. Your City Council is interested in your ideas and opinions and furthermore endeavors to incorporate them into its deliberations. At the same time, the council must be able to carry out its business in an organized and efficient manner free from material disruption. Therefore, this meeting will be administered in accordance with Government Code Section 54957.9 and the council's established policies and procedures. Individuals may speak on agenda items or on issues not posted on the agenda during the public comment section, providing those issues are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Individual speakers may address the council once per public comment period and once per each public hearing item for up to 3 minutes. Additional time may be allowed for appeal hearings in accordance with the city's adopted policy and procedures manual. All testimony must be directed solely to the council. Open meeting laws do not permit council members to engage in dialogue during the public comment periods. Speakers are requested to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Whether attending this meeting in person or via Zoom, once comments are invited, the speaker will be called on by name, then recognized by the presiding officer. The speaker will state the item number or numbers that will be addressed, or that the subject is a non-agendized matter. Audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, and those who do so are subject to removal from the meeting pursuant to Penal Code 403. Your understanding and cooperation are appreciated. Madam Clerk.
Our first speaker is Michael Grabhorn on a non-agendized item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Grabhorn. We're happy to see you.
Good evening, members of the City Council, city staff, and obviously Sheriff's Department. Excuse me. My name is Mike Grabhorn. I'm a member of the High Desert Community Coalition. Last meeting, we heard from a young lady, Miranda, about our evaluations of the liquor stores in Victorville. We have also done an evaluation of over 20 smoke shops in Victorville. I started with the coalition back in 2012 when we spearheaded an ordinance, which became a county ordinance also to eliminate the sale of spice and synthetic drugs at the liquor stores. And they were also available at gas stations and such, which we were successful in that. After going through the different smoke shops and taking assessments, one thing which came to our attention is the sale of pipes used to smoke methamphetamine and crack cocaine that are available in every single smoke shop which we evaluated in the high desert area. These pipes are available for $2 to $6. They are supposed to be legally sold by being called oil burners instead of meth pipes. I have asked some of the store owners how you use them to smoke or to use them as an oil burner or incense burner. None of them were able to answer that. The theory is that you put the oil, it's a long shaft with a round ball on the end. You put the synthetic oil in the shaft, you light it with a lighter, you spin it, and you blow through it, and it blows out the incense. I think this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. First of all, the incense is flammable, and if you're gonna sit there with a torch and light something 2 inches from your face, I guess it's up to you, but I've never heard of it. If it's used for incense, it should be sold at Walmart, Hobby Lobby with the other incense burners. This is nothing more than a smoking device used for methamphetamine and other illegal drugs. There is nothing legal about this pipe at all. I think the idea, and I don't know where it came from, I tried to research where this idea of if you don't call it a meth pipe, it's legal comes from. And I have not been able to find anything in writing. I don't know whether that's just a rumor that started, but it sure has worked good for our smoke shops. To kind of give you an idea of how ridiculous this is, in the state of California, it's illegal to possess or sell a switchblade knife
You have 30 seconds.
with a blade longer than 2 inches. Under this theory, I can call it a long pointy thing and I can sell it whatever. I'd like to see the loophole on this ordinance closed or a new ordinance imposed. Methamphetamine is a deathly drug. It creates no kind of benefit to society. It is covered under the meth or the safety code as a delivery system for methamphetamine. It creates havoc, domestic violence, burglary, murder, rape, all
Your
sorts of
time is up.
things.
Thank you,
for your
Ms.
time.
Thank you, Mr. Grabhorn. Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Jimmy Waldron on item number 14.
Good evening, Mr. Waldron. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and fellow City Council members. My name is Jimmy Waldron, and I'm the Executive Director for High Desert Homeless Services. I just wanted to thank you for your time and consideration in approving item number 14 for homeless shelter and homeless or housing service recovery program. We have been providing homeless services for the last 30 years, and in that time, we have helped to find long-term employment and housing solutions for over 13,000 homeless residents of our community. Every year, we try to expand the services that we offer and have made some amazing collaborations with other agencies to accent the services we provide. For several years, we partnered with Victor Valley Rescue Mission and other volunteer agencies like God's Hand Extended and the LDS Church to provide the warming shelter for our chronically homeless during the extremely cold nights to keep them safe. The last 2 years, we extended that warming shelter into a 24-hour COVID-19 shelter to help lower the risk of exposure to our most vulnerable residents and prevent the spread of the coronavirus. This year, we opened a small area of our shelter to allow the Simba Center a location so that they can provide free health clinic services to residents of our high desert who are uninsured and undocumented and deserve access to health care. We do so much for our local community with very limited funding, and we are so grateful to the city of Victorville for stepping up to help us nonprofits that are working so hard to improve the lives of our residents of the high desert. Our local community has been struggling with all the financial loss that has come along with the COVID-19 pandemic. There are so many small businesses that have had to close their doors forever, and the owners have lost everything they've worked so hard for all their lives. This same struggle is a harsh reality for us nonprofits, and the biggest concern of this is all the residents of our community that are relying on us to help them. Just a couple of weeks ago, we took 9 of our unemployed homeless clients to a hiring event, and 8 of them are now working full-time with benefits, saving their money, and looking for housing. I could only imagine how dire the problem with homelessness would be without organizations like ours and so many others working together to find solutions to help end homelessness. We ask that you please consider all the good that we do for our community if we just had a little help. Together, we can make a difference and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waldron. Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker has 2 names on it. It says Reggie Davis and Ada Brandon on a non-agendized item.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome both gentlemen.
Good evening. My name is Reggie Davis, and this is our first time here. So I don't kind of know the schedule, how to do it, but I wanted to bring this young man in with me. I'm I'm a correctional officer. I've been here for 2 years in Victorville. So me and my wife, we moved out here and she had another job out here. So I retired, well, not retired, but I'm not doing corrections anymore. But with juveniles, I used to work with youth down at TYC. So what I wanted to highlight was this young man here. We moved into the community out here in Brentwood, me and my wife, about 2 years ago. And I used to see this young man just around in the neighborhoods everywhere, just picking up trash.
Mhm.
So I told my wife one day, I said, hey, I want to ask this young man, like, is someone asking him to do this and everything? So when I stopped him, he was a little, kind of resistant to it. He kind of, looked at me. I said, hey, who's telling you to pick up this trash out here? And he just went to telling me about the community and
Mhm.
things like that. And that struck something in me because I deal with youth and this is where it starts at right here. So I wanted to present a plan. He has an excellent idea of getting together a trash unit every week and starting to picking up trash everywhere through Victorville. We don't know how it will be funded or anything like that, but we're willing to put money up and to get crews from the church and everything. I'm willing to supervise. He's only 16, but he has an excellent mind to do this. I mean, it's just in life, just made me feel really happy just to see our youth, out here doing this. So if you have a couple of minutes, let them know what you're.
Thank you. And Mr. Davis, thank you for coming forward. Madam Clerk, I want to make sure that each speaker had 3 minutes since they're, thank you. Welcome. This is Chupi. I had the good pleasure of helping to clean up our desert some months ago. And he took the opportunity to my colleagues to fill me with all of his ideas. And so we're happy to have you with us. Thank you for coming forward.
All right, well, my plan is to get a group established.
Can you speak more into the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, my plan is to get a group established every single week, go out to an area of the city of Victorville and clean it up and continue to do that from here on out. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
This council appreciates both of you and your heart for our city. Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is via Zoom, Diane Esmeralda.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Esmeralda. Welcome to our meeting. Are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. And because we are going back to, we're regressing a little bit concerning COVID-19. And my suggestion to this council would be to be proactive with your residents. Tell them about the vaccination and about masks and washing hands. Right now, currently, San Bernardino County is just having a horrible time with vaccinations and things. Maybe we could set up a vaccination center and things like that, really promote it for our residents so that they can understand the science. People like me who are fully vaccinated are starting to have breakthrough cases because of the fact that other people are not becoming vaccinated, refusing to wear their masks, things like that. And it's not really hard to wear a mask. I've been wearing one since 2010 or so when I was diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivity. So I've always worn one in public, and it's not really that hard. When people get mad about masks and other people masking themselves, sometimes it's not because of COVID, and it would be nice to be able to bring that to the community. Also, I wanted to talk to this council, maybe take the pulse of this council regarding cannabis. It has been voted on and being regulated all over the state. Other cities are taking in millions of dollars of grant dollars. They have youth programs to keep kids off drugs. They support all of these things that Mr. Grabhorn was talking about, monitoring these smoke shops appropriately, according to law, and making sure that cannabis is part of your city in a safe and regulated way instead of what we have right now, which is prohibition and just a little bit of chaos concerning cannabis. If you poke your head out, you could see, just the wild, wild west out there. And if
You have
the city
30
of-
seconds.
Thank you. If the city of Victorville were to regulate appropriately, we wouldn't have the things that we're finding in the desert right now that our senators are really concerned with and our assemblymen are concerned with. So please give me a call, 909-456-9087. I would love to talk to you about regulation of cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Esmeralda. We appreciate you being with us. Madam Clerk?
There are no more speakers.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to speak as a member of the public.
Thank you. So Member Gomez is going to speak as a member of the public. And so the audience will have to determine how much weight it wishes to place on her comments. She speaks as a member of the audience without the authority of her position as a council member. With that said, welcome, Ms. Gomez. Ms. Gomez, do you have a particular item that you wish to speak to, or is it a non-agendized matter?
I appreciate your commentary, and I'm ready to speak on my 3 minutes as they've already been started. It
So,
says
Ms.
here,
Gomez, you raise a good point, Madam Clerk. So until the speaker begins speaking, we want to make sure that we don't, Madam Clerk, we don't want to, if I'm commenting, we don't want to take that time away. So your time is with you. So did you want to let us know as per our,
I would like to speak freely without having
Sure.
to bow down to what you would like me to
it's
ask.
not about bowing down, Ms.
I
Gomez,
appreciate
it's just
it.
common
If I may
courtesy, but please
begin.
go ahead.
Thank you. You take pride in noting that the voters overwhelmingly supported continuing with the at-large system when this issue was placed in the ballot in 2016. The unsurprising fact that the established majority bloc wants to retain the winner takes all is not a defense. 71% of Latino voters supported district elections, but they were only 35% of the amount of the turnout. A 63% majority of non-Latino voters defeated the reform, entrenching their control of the entire council. As Ms. Leone warned, both of these attempts to preserve the winner takes all provide compelling evidence that the at-large system is unlawful. Recent city council elections. Your letter appears to concede that there is an inference of racially polarized voting, but goes on to assert that this is not legally significant because minority preferred candidates are not usually being defeated. This is wrong for two reasons. Under the CVRA, dilution can be established exclusively based on the ballot questions without regards to council elections. Moreover, the elements require that minority candidates should usually be defeated. Sometimes called the Gingles 2 element in a specific claims that the majority minority districts would be created under the effects test of Federal Voting Rights Act. The premise also appears to be false. Latino candidates are usually defeated. In 2016, Sergio Reyes, each receiving more than 20% of the Latino vote and almost no white votes, but was defeated in a 10-way race by Jim Cox, who received 22% of the Anglo vote and less than 2% of the Latino vote. In 2018, there were 6 Latino candidates, all but Rita Ramirez, whose vote, 48% of the Latino vote, were defeated. 5 Latino preferred candidates were again defeated in 2020 election, despite the Latino majority in voting age population. Only 1 candidate that Latinos preferred, Blanca Gomez, was elected. Polarization of Latino preferred candidates in 2020. In Victorville, as was the case in Ontario, a primary mechanism of dilution is a proliferation of minority candidates, many of whom are not viable because of the at-large system, which impairs the normal vetting, endorsements, and funding processes that exist when district elections allow protection of minorities to promote natural leaders from their own neighborhoods. Unlike the effects test of Section 2, the CVRA does not focus on mathematical submergence. It takes a holistic view of the voter dilution that
You have
considers the
30
suppression
seconds.
of the processes that communities use to identify, recruit, and elect natural leaders. The at-large system disempowers entire minority neighborhoods, which is why CVRA requires district elections, whether racially polarized voting RPV is shown. Election to replace member Ramirez. The staff reported on item 18 in 2021 acknowledged the loss of residency by her which is Rita Ramirez, at the discretion of the city council.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez, for the verbatim iteration of Attorney Rafferty's letter to the council. All right, moving on to our next business in order. That's the consent calendars, items number 1 through 5. Motion is in order for the council and the council acting on its various boards of directors to approve action on consent calendars, items 1 through 5, in accordance with the recommendations presented on the agenda. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move the motion as recommended by staff.
Motion by
Second.
Member Gomez. Excuse me, we have a motion by Member Becerra. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the council has just taken, council and the various boards of directors have taken action in accordance with the recommendations laid out on the agenda. Moving on to our next business in order, which is the written communication section, beginning with item number 6. Mr. Metzler is with us via Zoom. Mr. Metzler, this item is the award of a general services provider standard agreement to Trimark Associates Incorporated for meter services. Mr. Metzler, will you kindly introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Trimark is a firm that we've worked with for some time through the Victorville Municipal Utilities Services division, and they're relied on mainly to help us help maintain our electric meters, period. They also help us ensure that they're operating properly. These are the meters that are relied upon to actually bill customers from. So with that, the item has been prepared by your Director of Electric Utility Services, Ms. Brenda Hampton. She's available for any detailed questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, will you kindly read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council approves the award of a general services provider standard agreement to Trimark Associates, Inc. in the amount of $36,000 for meter services.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we're now going to move on to technical questions for clarification as it relates to the staff report, beginning with Member Becerra.
No questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes. What is the expected life of a meter, and when is the last documented date that the meter or meters were replaced, and what was that reasoning?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'll go ahead and turn that over to Ms. Hampton. She's likely best to be able to answer that question.
Thank you. And I would say that I don't have the exact time frame for how long a meter would last, but when you're talking about replacement of meters, we replace the meters as they fail. And so what this contract does is it provides maintenance to the meters, and it provides testing and inspection of the meters, making sure they're calibrated correctly. And then if one fails, it provides replacement of those meters. And you know, if you'd like to know, I can go ahead and get that life of the meter, normal life of the meter, and deliver that to you.
In terms of the replacement, you specified that you weren't sure.
I'm not sure how long a meter is expected to last. If it's a 10-year meter or a 15-year meter, I would have to actually look that up.
Okay, so contextualizing my question, in terms of this last meter that obviously failed, how long was it there before it, you know, whatever gave up?
When you're saying this last meter, are you referring to a specific meter?
So I'm in supposition based on the agenda item that we're replacing something or something is broken. I don't understand the assumption being maybe we're just
Sure.
backing it up. So I'm not, my question is relation to that.
I understand. Okay, so what the contract is for Trimark just to handle this when it happens. So it's not saying that we had one in particular that had a failure. It's saying that they're going to maintain our meters. And so we have a number of meters out in the system. And so they will be checking the meters. They'll be periodically doing preventative maintenance, testing, inspection, calibration. And if a meter fails, they would provide a replacement. So it's not about a particular meter that's failed in the past. It's in preparation for any meters that may fail in the future.
Thank you. Is the city aware of the vendor using subcontracting agencies beyond their own full-time, part-time employees? And if so, where is that language transparent within the standard agreement of Trimark and Associates, Inc.?
I am not aware of them using subcontractors for this.
Okay. Is the money rendered and fully appropriated by the city to the vendor immediately after approval of tonight's agenda, or is the money disseminated as we incur these receipts through the costs and then the department begins to allocate funds?
So once the contract is signed and in effect, then we'll be paying them on a monthly basis for the amount that we have agreed to, which is roughly $36,000.
Did you say lump sum? I'm sorry, I misheard.
We'll be paying them on a monthly basis for the amount that is in the contract for the annual total of $36,000.
Thank you for that clarification. Specifically, what level of service has the city of Victorville made an agreement upon? And are there 3 levels of services? Which one did we decide to go with?
So within their offering, they have a number of different things that they list in there. We already have a contract with them for doing certain services, data uploads, and reviews of data. So that's already in effect. And so the only thing that we're doing is the one piece that talks about the maintenance, inspection, and testing.
Okay, yeah. So there was the bronze, silver, and gold, and your explanation helps me understand why we didn't select one. We already had a contract. Is there a recovery cost for the expenses in maintenance and operations when Bemis bills the customers who will be receiving these types of services? There's a slew of listings, and I suppose those are.
Yeah, those are really all of our meters that we have, that they'll be doing all of our Trimark meters. And so the customers won't be individually billed unless there would be some kind of tampering issue, which is a different issue. This is part of our normal cost of doing business for the utility.
And is there a schedule of fees in the report that you can help me find and then help me understand in providing a real case scenario? All I saw, it wasn't necessarily a case, the schedule of fee, but it was a rate fee. So if you can translate, is that the schedule of fee?
So there is a quote for that price that's on page 12 of Exhibit A, but it doesn't have individual pieces of it. It doesn't say, it's this much for maintenance and this much for testing and this much for inspection. It's a lump sum that we are paying.
What page did you
It's
say?
page 12 of Exhibit A.
Page 155 of the agenda.
155. Okay. All right, thank you. I have no further questions, and I'll look at what you presented. Thank you.
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Initially, I had a question. We're not expanding the scope of work. This is a separate contract for a different task or function. But this entity is doing data management and maintenance simultaneously. Got it. Thank you. No.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, Ms. Hampton, is it fair to say that the award of this really has to do with the city making sure that we're faithful in the care of the city's assets and that we're prepared for emergencies?
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that being said, the chair invites a motion from the council.
I'd like to move that as recommended by staff as we see on the agenda item.
Thank you. We have a motion by Member Gomez. Is there a second?
Second motion.
Thank you. We have a second by our Mayor Pro Tem. We're going to now move into discussion on the pending motion, beginning with the maker. And this, the discussion is as it relates specifically to the motion. Member Gomez.
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
No.
Thank you. The chair has none. Discussion period is closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the city council has just taken action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda. Moving on to item number 7. This is the purchase of one 1,500, one 2,500, and two 3,000/3750 kVA liquid filled pad mounted transformers for lot 44. Mr. Metzler, will you tee up the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Yes, this is to purchase a transformer or equipment related to the provision of power to a large facility, approximately 1.4 million square foot facility, which is ultimately to become the Amazon Fulfillment Center on a lot that we commonly refer to as Lot 44, but that's on the west side of the airport. And as projects are conditioned as a part of their approval through the planning process to connect to the VEMA system, developers are required to prepare a system design, which the system design for this project yielded these components along with others. But because these are long lead items and typically are expensive items requiring approval authority above the city manager's approval authority, is the reason why these items are coming before you for consideration. Anticipating approval by the council tonight of these items, it's expected that these transformers will be delivered in a time appropriate prior to C of O, to where the building can be energized and tested and energized properly. So with that, the author on this item is your Director of Electric Utility Services, Ms. Brenda Hampton. She's available for any detailed questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, will you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council approve a sole source arrangement with ABB Enterprise Software, Inc. for the purchase of electric utility distribution equipment and the purchase of one 1,500, one 2,500, and two 3,000/3750 kVA liquid-filled pad-mounted transformers for Lot 44 from ABB in the amount not to exceed $237,210.94.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we're going to move into technical questions for clarification as it relates specifically to the agenda item. We're going to begin with Member Gomez.
Yes, when was the last time the department conducted a thorough research to ascertain that the existing sole source is still applicable? And if so, would you exclude the capacity, since I'm requesting of other suppliers, not the sense of the capacity, but of the current arrangement with ABB Enterprise Software?
Madam Mayor and members of the council, the sole source test is conducted for every purchase. So it's something routinely we do when we go out for items. There's a justification that has to take place. Purchasing is the division that oversees that. And a determination has to be made that sole source is appropriate. In this particular case, it's largely appropriate because we have a standardization of equipment out at CLA, and effectively that equipment is our electric utility system. Deviating from that could actually make things more difficult from an operating and maintenance standpoint. So therefore, because of the standardization or the standardized system requirements that we have out there, including the equipment, is why we continue to rely on ABB for these types of components.
Thank you. Let me reframe the question. When was the last time that the department conducted a thorough research to ascertain that the existing current applicable source was in place? I understand that it's procedural. I just want to understand if it's done yearly, maybe every 6 months. How often is this occur? And if this occurred, when did it occur for this particular item?
Prior to actually going out and procuring the item.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Prior to actually procuring this particular item.
So we would say in 2021, this has taken place. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Has the city of Victorville in the past worked with ABB Enterprise Software Incorporated?
Yes.
Yes. And of the 1.3 million square feet that is designated to Amazon's fulfillment center, how much of the space will VMIS service? The entirety?
The entire building, correct.
Okay. So then there's these liquid filled pads that are mounted transformers. I'm trying to understand from the images that were in this reporting, if it covers the entire 1.3 million, or they're just little pieces of things that cover sparingly in the 1.3 million square footage.
These are forms of equipment that typically are found outside the building and perhaps adjacent to public right-of-way, but on private property. And basically, it's the equipment that is necessary to transform voltage from higher voltage system to a lower voltage system so that the building can actually handle the electricity coming onto site.
Thank you. Is the project site imaged on page 170 in yellow, the space of the product placement? Or I'm trying to understand that image. There's a little line. So I wanted to understand the inside or the outside in terms of where these things were going to go, inside or outside the yellow lining.
It's going to be inside the yellow lining, but I think a better illustration, because the yellow lining identifies roadway, gateway particularly, because there's an extensive amount of gateway that has to be widened and extended from its existing terminus. So the yellow is largely defining the entire project site. The actual development, the actual building, I should say, easiest way to characterizing it using that map is that it's going to be north of and abutting where the word Momentum Road is. And so you likely can envision the transformer equipment being up there closer to where the building is going to go.
Last question, please draw your attention to the highlighted portion of the document where exceptions and is highlighted. There's like a B and a 2 on page 190. I just want to know why that highlighted portion was and why there was an exception. I felt like that needed a little
Time is
bit of
up.
explanation.
Madam Clerk, I'm sorry.
Your time is up.
Thank you. Mr. Metzler, will you kindly answer Member Gomez's question?
Yeah, it's actually I'm sorry, okay, there it is. Yeah, it's actually highlighted specifically to address the earlier questions and comments regarding sole source. And so those are the provisions of the code that purchasing and the VMIS department is actually relying upon to support the sole source effort in using this particular equipment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Mayor Pro Tem Irving, questions? Thank you, Member Becerra.
Yes, I just have a couple. Mr. Metzler, I noticed on page 175, lead times for the liquid filled pads. What my concern is with COVID right now, everything is backed up. You can't even buy something because it's backed up because of COVID. As soon as these get approved, if they get approved tonight, do we anticipate a problem with delivery with these? Because that would back up the building being able to be occupied by Amazon.
Thank you, Councilmember Becerra. I'm going to ask Ms. Hampton if she can speak to that. I know we have recent experience because this council recently approved similarly natured purchase transformers related to, I believe it's lot 19, which is a building that's currently under construction. I believe it's under construction for Mars. Right there at the intersection of Phantom and Nevada. And perhaps we can draw from that experience to answer whether or not we can foresee any delivery issues.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. We do not foresee any delivery issues as far as being able to get these in time for the Amazon development. We have been talking with ABB and making sure that they don't have the kind of backup that you talked about. Of course, we've seen that with a lot of different things. And so we've been keeping up with them and making sure that that's not going to be an issue and that we do have a good estimate of how long it's going to take. So we don't believe there's going to be an issue as long as we can get these ordered on time.
Thank you, ma'am. And I noticed it says drawing submittals. Are we going to need to submit drawings or no? It's basically the same ones that are for all of our other buildings due to the fact that we have the square footage that's basically the same. So the amount of energy that needs to be run through them.
Madam Mayor, I'm also going to ask Ms. Hampton to speak to that. My understanding is that these are plan submittals that effectively have already been done as a part of the system design, and that's effectively how we're able to draw the specs necessary, such as transformers, to actually have to go out and purchase. I don't know necessarily, though, if there is additional review of those plans or if in fact they're approved. So I'll allow Ms. Hampton to speak to where we're at in that process.
Sure. So IEC is our engineering firm and they provide the design specs for the design packages. And so there is no change that needs to go with these drawings and everything has been has been put in that needs to in order for us to make sure that we are purchasing and procuring the correct transformers for this group.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Becerra. All right, so if one were to just read the recommendation, it looks like we're going to pay out just under $250,000. But the reality of this, please tell me if I'm incorrect, is that there's no net fiscal impact to the city in that this is all prepaid by Sterling Capital.
That's correct. That's correct.
you.
We don't come to the council until it's paid in full.
Got it. Very good. Thank you. All right. That being said, the chair invites a motion from the city council.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Member Becerra, is that moving of the staff recommendation?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We have a first by Member Becerra, a second by Member Gomez. We're going to begin with discussion on the pending motion with the maker. Member Becerra.
No discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
None, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Chair has none. Discussion period is now closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the council has just taken action in accordance with the recommendation laid out on the agenda. We're now going to move on to item number 8. This is the capital project needs analysis for Green Tree Boulevard Extension and Bear Valley Road overhead at BNSF Railroad projects. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item does have a approval deadline and a submittal deadline before September 30th, 2021. And with the approval, or presuming the approval by the council tonight, we will then be able to submit to SBCTA this document and meet that deadline. Effectively, this is a procedural requirement where, as a part of SCTA's administering of Measure I and more particularly the major local highway funds, they do require analyses to be prepared by the jurisdiction. In this particular case, we've prepared this analysis through the oversight of our city engineer, Mr. Brian Gangler. And this analysis has been done to include the two main projects that we're familiar with, one being under construction, which is a Green Tree extension, and the one nearing the start of construction being the Bear Valley overhead at BNSF. So with that, the author is Mr. Gangler, your city engineer. He's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk.
That the Honorable City Council approve the capital project needs analysis for the Green Tree Boulevard Extension and the Bear Valley Road overhead at BNSF Railroad projects for fiscal year 2022, 2023 through 2026, 2027.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, moving on to technical questions for clarification, beginning with Mayor Pro Tem Irving as it relates to the staff report.
This analysis is pretty standard for all projects. Is that correct?
My understanding is it's their standard for capital improvement projects funded by SBCTA, particularly through their major local highway program fund.
I guess I should have developed that question more, but that was essentially what I was asking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Becerra.
No questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes. Are the Victor Valley Major Local Highways Program and the Valley Freeway Interchange and Arterial Program committees where councils have a decision and are seated? If so, who would those individuals be?
I believe that's the SBCTA board in of itself, but I'll ask Mr. Gangler to come up and speak to that more particularly.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. That's correct. The SBCTA board is the body that makes the decisions regarding that funding. Although there are committees, there is the Mountain Desert Committee for the Mountain Desert area, which we're in, and then there's also a subgroup for that. The cities and the county in our area in the Victor Valley that have input into decisions for the funding, the major local highway program funding here. And then the valley cities south of us also have input into the funding for their sub-area.
Of the various programs listed on the report, there's 7 of them. Using the attachment, would you please be able to identify the gaps by pointing to the fields where you and or the departments addressed them if there were gaps?
On these projects, there really are no funding gaps. Both projects are fully funded. There have been previous funding agreements and subsequent amendments that have been approved by City Council and SBCTA. So both projects are fully funded without any funding gaps.
Without any funding caps? Is that what you said?
I'm sorry, without any funding gaps. In other words, there are no, the projects are fully funded with sufficient funds.
Okay, also, of the 4 types of the needs assessment, which one is it that we're using and why did we use it? So there's normative need, comparative need, expressive need, and the felt need.
This really doesn't fit into any of those categories. This is a form for SBCTA and by SBCTA. It's really for their needs so that they can plan out their cash flow this year and the following year. So it's really a financing tool for SBCTA.
Okay, so the way I was reading the reporting was perhaps that the city department somehow was looking into the different types of need analysis, and the attachment would be able to be explained to show how that needs analysis or maybe a comparative would come through. But you're saying that that's not the role that we play. That's the county's role.
It's a term that SBCTA applied to this form. They call it, it's SBCTA's needs analysis. In other words, it's what they need to supply their funding for the various projects within the county. So it's really a term that they coined for this use.
Okay, so I failed to give you the 7 different programs, and maybe that clarification, if it's not Victorville, but it's the county, would help. It's Measure I, the major local highway program, Measure I, the local pass-through, the federal surface transportation program, the highway infrastructure program, federal highway bridge rehabilitation program, development loan from SBCTA, and roads development impact fee. Are those all for the county?
Well, these are various fund sources that flow through SBCTA, and these are the funds, excuse me, these are the fund sources that are used on these 2 projects in particular. And so on the form, we are required to complete the form with all the funds that are on these 2 particular projects.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gangler. The chair has no questions and invites a motion from the council.
So move to follow staff's recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'd like to second that.
Thank you. We have a first by Member Becerra, second by Member Gomez. I'm going to move on to discussion on the pending motion, beginning with the maker, Member Becerra. Thank you. Discussion from Member Gomez.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No discussion.
Thank you. The chair has none. Discussion period is closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the council has taken action in accordance with the recommendations set out on the agenda. Moving on to item number 9. This is the consultant professional services provider agreement with Wilden Financial Services for assessment district services. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item is being brought forward to bring on an independent professional services provider, really to help us better administer some of the workload that we're experiencing in the engineering division over on the development side of the house. And effectively on the engineering side or the engineering division in the development office, there is very few employees that we have available tasked to take this workload on, along with other workloads, particularly relating to private development, plan submittals and things of that sort. And we've gotten to the point where effectively we believe we'd be better served because of the unpredictable nature of some of this work, to where we'd be better served having a professional come in and take this on and perhaps and give it the attention that it deserves, undivided attention that it deserves. Particularly, we're talking about work associated with the 15 LMADs, DFADs, SLADs, and MADs, which are assessment districts. Everything from the formation, which is a process that we've seen at the council quite routinely, where we're dealing with effectively the notices of intent, the adoption of engineers reports, ultimately the vote from the property owners, all the way through to the back end, which is the administering side, to make sure that all of the properties are properly identified and assessed, and those submittals to the county without mistake or error. So it's a pretty extensive workload, and it ebbs and flows, especially on the front end side. And because it's not predictable, it makes it really difficult for us on the engineering side to manage it. So as to not reduce the quality of collective workload, staff had determined this type of service provider necessary to help with this workload. So with that, the better details of the staff report can be answered by your city engineer, Mr. Brian Gangler. He's available for any questions or comments you have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, will you read the recommendation, please?
That the Honorable City Council approve a consultant professional service provider agreement with Wildan Financial Services for Assessment District Services, project number BM 21-093, in an amount not to exceed $102,000.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, moving on to technical questions for clarification, beginning with Member Becerra.
Mr. Metzler, is this going to be an ongoing project for them to assist us with different things come out throughout the year, or it's going to be one contract for them to close out?
It's actually envisioned at this point to be something ongoing.
Thank you very much, sir. No further questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Member Gomez.
Yes. Mr. Metzler, you said in terms of ongoing, would you please clarify that? I might have missed the question that you're responding to.
Well, the question was whether or not we envision this to be closing out a certain function, or if we envision it ongoing. We envision it ongoing, which is also to mean we envision this contract to be recurring, not just for this year, but for future years.
And thank you for the clarification. For clarification, does every parcel alluded to in the reportage imply commercial and industrial land for the purposes of the LSLAD, LMAD, MAD, and DFAD in the city of Victorville?
Well, it really depends. And each LMAD jurisdiction, each DFAD jurisdiction, each SLAD jurisdiction, and each MAD jurisdiction, they incorporate a number of different properties, and they could be a variety of land uses, whether it be residential, commercial, or industrial. But in the aggregate, this contract would identify all of those properties and make sure the proper assessment calculations are done and applied.
So does that presume somehow that we will still have a few of the employees addressing some of these parcels?
Well, we'll still be involved. We'll still oversee the contract. And in terms of some of the physical work, such as say, out in the LMADs or MADs or even DFADs, I mean, we will have staff doing certain types of work out there. We won't be totally hands-off by the approval of this contract.
Thank you. And to outsource because of a lack of employee manpower, can that not be redetermined for hiring, potentially expanding the city's manpower through a department? So in other words, was there another viable option that we could have looked at, or how did we come to this determination?
Yeah, so we will continue to look at the appropriateness of whether or not it's worth hiring a full-time equivalent or full-time equivalents to handle this workload. As we've studied it up to this point, based upon where we're at, we believe the best use of our resource is to bring on a independent third-party professional service contractor. I think the largest contributing factor to that is the unpredictable nature of the formations that we see. And when we do have, say, a project coming in that's wanting to annex into or form a new DFAD or LMAD, that's a fairly extensive amount of work that an individual, or it's actually two individuals in the engineering department that effectively work on this. Because of the infrequent nature, this will pull that individual or those individuals off their baseline work, and actually causes either a demand for overtime or comp time, or potentially causes a reduction in the quality of the work product. And so we're trying to avoid that. And so right now, because the formations particularly are not predictable, we believe the best use of our resources to contract it out. If it were to be determined that this type of work was predictable to where we could see it as baseline recurring work going forward for an extended period of time, that may change our minds with respect to hiring a full-time equivalent, but we're not there yet.
Okay, I don't know if you mentioned that the engineering department would be the department that would be affected. Is that the case if we were to bring in a third party to aid with the assessment districts?
This is primarily assisting the engineering department.
Okay, I just figured the LMADs and all that had to do with somehow community services or landscaping. That's not the issue.
No.
Okay, thank you. And last question is the provider service agreement by and between the city and Wilden Financial Services the spitting image of what we see in item number 6? I see a lot of redundancy, but I just want to understand if these contracts that I see 3 times appearing are similar in nature, not similar, but they are the exact same thing with the recitals and everything that goes along with that.
They're 2 completely different companies. The company under 6 is Trimark, providing a completely different service unrelated to what Wildan is performing under this proposed contract.
Yes, I understand. It's just I was comparing them and they look same, just every single word to number 49. They're the exact same thing. So I just want to verify if what I was looking at, even though they apply to different programs or vendors, if they're just, we're cutting and pasting the same thing because it's contractual.
Well, if you're speaking to the contract, we do have a standard contract that we have a standard template that serves as our contract, and we try to keep as much of our procurement contracts as uniform as possible. So that's likely why you see a lot of similarity in the actual procurement contract. But when you actually dig deep into it, what you'll find that differentiates them all is the exhibit detailing the scope of services, and typically that's defined under Exhibit A of each of those contracts.
Thank you for your clarification. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem
Welcome.
Irving?
Yes, I think the prior conversation sort of answered my questions in regards to outsourcing the scope of work that's presently being done by 2 people. It's just too much. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, and it's principally one person with the second person being the supervisor to the work, but it's really one person that has been responsible for the heavy lifting of this scope. And yeah, it's just become too much to where it's causing us to potentially neglect other work.
Okay, and you mentioned to Councilwoman Gomez that you anticipate this to be ongoing work or to be an ongoing agreement. I was wondering why this initial agreement sunsets in June of 2022, even though there's an option to extend the contract for 4 additional 1-year option periods. Is that just because you're monitoring the ongoing work?
That is correct.
Okay, lastly, I see that there's an estimated reduction in the contract amount of 70,000. Is that our estimate, and how did we reach that estimation? Because presently what's on the table right now is a contract for 102,000.
Correct. And I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Irving, I'm not drawing a connection to the 70,000.
Right above attachments, the language on page 201, I think 1, 2, 3, like this third paragraph up, it says in subsequent years, it's estimated that the annual contract amount will be reduced to approximately $70,000.
Yes, you know what? I'm going to ask Mr. Gangler to embellish on that a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. The reason for the estimated reduction is we anticipate some one-time work that will be completed this fiscal year. It will be essentially a review of our existing assessment districts and developing some templates, some standard formats for the engineer's reports and such. And then after that work is completed, there will be less effort in the following year.
Okay, I understand. So we're going to put some processes in place to address the workload. All right, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving. Well, listen, my colleagues have already asked the main question that I was going to ask, and it's been answered sufficiently. I just have one other question. So we have the opportunity to extend in one-year increments this contract, but during those times, we're going to continually evaluate our ongoing need, I would assume.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the chair has no other questions and invites a motion from the council.
I'd like to move that.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move
recommendation, thank
motion
you.
as
Is there a
recommended.
second?
There is
Oh,
a second.
I heard it from Mayor Pro Tem. Did I?
No, it's Councilwoman Gomez.
Oh, remember,
actually.
you know what? I'm so sorry.
Spoke at the same time.
Okay, Member Gomez, is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to move into discussion on the pending motion, beginning with Member Gomez.
Not at the moment, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem,
No discussion, ma'am.
thank you. Member Becerra,
No discussion, thank you.
thank you. And the chair has none. And my apologies. I've been having a little difficulty hearing our Madam Clerk because of the barriers, but I apologize to Member Gomez. All right, with that said, the discussion period is now closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we've adopted the staff recommendation. Moving on to item number 10. This is the sublease agreement between the City of Victorville and the Victor Valley Transit Authority. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. We're pleased to bring this item before you as it actually helps us establish a more formal, longer-term relationship with VVTA, as VVTA has already relocated its transfer station to the transit facility. This will, once approved by the bank, once the bank consents to our ability to lease this, we'll enter into this agreement with VVTA, where VVTA will then pay a lease revenue to the city and also take on a number of operating expenses that largely the city has been responsible since it originally built this facility. So with that, the better details of this item are understood and can be spoken to by Ms. Janelle Davidson. She's your deputy city manager. She's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk.
That the Honorable City Council adopt resolution number 21-097, authorizing and approving the sublease agreement between the city and Victor Valley Transit Authority for the Victorville Transportation Center, the associated budget amendment to the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual budget, and the deputy city manager to execute said sublease agreement, and that the Honorable Board of Directors of the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority provide by motion its consent to said sublease agreement and authorize the VJPFA Executive Director to execute the consent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, moving on to questions for clarification as it relates to the agenda item. We're going to begin with Member Gomez.
Yes, what is the 5% discount and what attributed to the negotiations? What was the rationale? And will the discount be affected in the rider's cost at any time soon, if so?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to ask that Ms. Davidson speak to those questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Mayor and council members, the 5% discount is an annual prepayment option that is being made available to BVTA. And what it went into the negotiation was really just a consideration of the time value of money. A prepayment would streamline the process throughout the year. We're not processing individual payments. And as far as how that might translate into fares, I cannot speak to that question. It is a minor discount. I can't imagine in the overall scheme of things it would have a huge impact. But we do have Mr. Kevin Kane and Ms. Christine Plasting from BBTA on the line. If they have any information, we could potentially have them answer that portion of the question.
With regard to the fares, there will be no impact, positive or negative, to the passenger fares.
Thank you. And then for clarification, you stated, Ms. Janelle Davidson, that there would be time value of money in regards to the 5%. Would you please elaborate? I missed some of that information.
Sure. We're basically offering a discount to streamline the process. We're not having to process individual invoices and payments each month. BVTA receives the discount, and we're still able to cover our operating costs. And that's really what it boils down to. Does that answer your question?
Is this a one-time, or is this consistent with the contract that will be holding from now until BVTA decides that it doesn't want to continue its subleasing, or whoever decides not to?
It's an annual option.
So the annual option comes with a 5% discount annually as well, or is that a one-time?
It's annually as long as they prepay at the beginning of each year.
Okay, so it's kind of like an incentive for them to pay up front, but it also alleviates probably paperwork on behalf of the city and having to do things of that nature?
Correct. And one other benefit would be, because we're just starting off, the city does have what could ultimately be some larger expenses relative to roof repairs and replacement, HVAC repairs and replacement. And until we build up the funds under the newly established fund, it would give us a little bit of upfront money to work with. So there is a benefit to the city as well.
Okay, and would you be able to explain more on the VJPFA, the variable range lease revenue bond, and the remainder of the paragraph that speaks to the consent of that sublease?
Sure. This is one of several properties that is encumbered and is part of a leaseback scenario under the VMUS Cogen bonds that were established in 2007. So essentially, anytime we're looking to sublease a facility, we have to get the consent of the credit entity in that transaction, which is BNP Paribas. Our legal counsel has been working with their legal counsel to effectuate that consent, and that is in process currently.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
Mrs. Davidson, this transportation center that serves VVTA, it not only serves the city of Victorville, but serves the whole high desert, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the buses now that are going there go out to all the way from Fort Irwin and just starting down to San Bernardino State University, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. No further.
Thank you, Member Becerra. And the chair has no questions as to the staff report. Invites a motion from the council as well as the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority Board of Directors.
I'd like to move that motion as stated in the agenda and recommended by staff as well.
So, Member Gomez, you wish to move staff's recommendation?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a first by Member Gomez. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Discussion on the pending motion, beginning with the maker, Member Gomez.
Not at the moment.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No comments.
Thank you. Member Becerra.
No comment.
Thank you. And the chair just has one comment in appreciation for all of the hard work that has gone into this to bring us this far and having this placed on our agenda. So kudos to our staff. With that said, the discussion period is now closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the City Council, as well as the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority Board of Directors, has adopted staff's recommendation. Moving on to item number 11. This is the Center for the Arts Fire Restoration Project Budget Amendment and Change Order. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Yeah, this item is to address the Center of the Arts facility that's located on 8th and C Street in Old Town Victorville. Unfortunately, that facility was subjected to fire and was damaged. We had relied on insurance to help us through this process, starting with an insurance adjuster having visited the site. The reason for the change order on this particular item is the insurance adjuster first visiting the site did not catch the items that are being addressed in this current change order back when the initial assessment of the property damage was being done. But that notwithstanding, the change order is being funded from insurance proceeds. So with that, the author on the item is your building official, Mr. Kevin Collins. He can be available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, will you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council approve resolution number 21-098, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual budget and approving a change order in the amount not to exceed $89,154.45 for unforeseen damages and circumstances discovered during the course of construction for the Center for the Arts Fire Restoration Project.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move into technical questions for clarification, beginning with Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes, this is a change order. I am curious, when did Belfour Property Restoration initially inspect the center, or was it the claims adjuster? And this is following the fire, correct?
Correct, following the fire. And my understanding is that after the fire, our first phone call is to the insurance provider, and they send out the adjuster, and from there is when the adjuster makes the first estimate. But I'm not the one that deals with this most routinely. The one most familiar is Mr. Collins. He could speak in better detail as to how these issues were overseen and then eventually fought.
Thank you. So I'm curious, if the claims adjuster came out to inspect the property, how did they miss curtain and drape cleaning, framing and rough carpentry for damages to the stage? How did they miss all of that? You know, because when I look at, this company probably submitted their bid and they were probably the lowest responsive bidder. And now they're coming back for almost $100,000 for something that, to me, based on my experience, with the fire, I don't see how this was overlooked. So I need some help.
Yeah, understood. And so first, this is not something that would have gone through our standard bidding process. Typically, when you're dealing with an insurance matter like this, you're likely relying on an approved list of restoration or contractors approved by the insurance company, and you select from them. And with that, that's my general understanding of the process. But I'd like Mr. Collins to speak to that more particularly. How could these items be missed? As Mr. Collins and his team were out in the field dealing with this project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, thanks, City Manager Metzler. What happened with the drapes is the initial inspection, they just thought they were going to be able to clean them on site. But then after we got into the project and we got deep into it, the curtains were more heavily damaged with the smoke and also the chemicals that they soaked up. So they had to be taken down and sent out and thoroughly cleaned, and they used some type of chemical cleaning process on the draperies and the curtains. And that also is what happened with the theater seating. They thought they were going to be able to clean them on site. Again, because of the heavy smoke damage and chemical from the fire that got into there. They had to clean them, and then once they started cleaning them, they also had to replace some of the seating padding in there as well. And as far as the stage damage, what happened with that is because we had a hole in the roof caused from the fire during the insurance process and creating all the list for the site and contacting the two contractors. Initially, what happened is we had two major storm events that blew the tarps off the roof, and we got some water damage from there, and that's why we had to get into the stage and replace the plywood from the water damage.
I see. Okay, well, setting aside the process, still, I really can't comprehend how with smoke, there's always smoke damage, and you always clean the materials, right? The material fabrics and so forth. I don't know how they missed that, but okay, I guess you've answered my question. I'd probably need to talk to whoever did the initial inspection, right? So how'd you miss that? But thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Becerra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, I understand this building is down on 8th Street. In looking at it, we've added fencing that wasn't there prior to the fire. What other security upgrades have we done for that building?
I'm not aware specifically, but I'd like Ms. Davidson, she likely can answer that. If we provided anything more than the fencing.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Mayor and City Council, the fencing is the only security measure that we've provided at this point. However, we are in discussions with largely the same group that occupied the building prior to the incident, and we're working on trying to get them back into that facility. And one of the items they brought up more recently was the desire to add security cameras at the site. So that is something we're exploring with them currently.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. This will probably be for Mr. Duran. Have we noticed the influx of visitors back there as we had when the fire started?
We've actually seen a reduction in some of the visitors that were out there. This was an area where previously we had a sanitation station, and that was drawing some attention in that area. We do have some visitors that tend to kind of visit the small park area that's there in the museum. So our staff is pretty active on clearing them out.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, in terms as to the city trying to protect this facility or commit to any maintenance or any operations, what type of funding sources were used to direct, whether it was discretionary or other types of funding?
I think in this particular case as well, I'll ask Ms. Davidson to speak to the funding sources for the improvements, the security related improvements that had been placed on the facility.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Mayor and City Council, the fencing was actually funded through one of the rounds of CARES Act funding that became available at the end of last calendar year. And if you recall, it was one of those items that was subject to the expenditure deadline of December 31st. So it was moved forward and completed prior to the end of last year.
And were there any court proceedings or prosecutions based on the damages of the building that were somehow the city came in consciousness of or knew or found out about?
Not that I'm aware of.
And how can or has the city recuperated costs based on the damages by fires? Or water damage or whatever, any other damages? How are we recuperating? What are we doing? Do we wait for funding? Do we do grants? Do we wait on state funding? Do we do discretionary funds? How do we mitigate that?
Well, if it's an insured building such as this one, then we'll rely on the insurance proceeds to kick in to reimburse the costs.
And is the building somehow for lease, or will it be for lease in the future after its reparations? Has it been abandoned for such a long time?
Well, I'm not sure the exact mechanism, whether it's a lease or a facility use agreement, but as Ms. Davidson stated earlier, we're working with the prior occupant to reactivate the theater operation that they once had in there.
Okay, so then, before the fires and the damage of the water came through, this building was in full force, being whatever it was doing, it was in high performance. Something came up, it was a fire, and now we're addressing it. Is that correct?
I don't recall it being in high performance. I believe this was during the pandemic, so things were shut down, but it had been used prior to the pandemic for theater productions.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, with regard to the change order, I had the same concern as Mayor Pro Tem Irving, because when I read the report, I was very concerned about the language about unforeseen damages, because those, when I look at that kind of thing, it's how can you miss that, especially when we first had this discussion about awarding this contract to Belfour Property. There was a lot of discussion about this company's unique ability to handle a property that has historic value. And so I was concerned. I think the question's been answered sufficiently that this really probably was an effect of the insurance adjuster and truly some things that came about that weren't expected, although I just am still surprised by the language a little bit. I am glad, though, that this is going to be covered by insurance. So I suppose the net result of all of this is that we're going to end up with if we look at those pictures, a nicer building than what we had. And is that a fair assumption to make?
That is a fair assumption to make.
All right, thank you. With that said, I'm going to invite a motion from the council.
So moved following.
I'd like to second it.
Staff's recommendation, Member Becerra.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We have a first by Member Becerra, a second by Member Gomez. Discussion on the pending motion, Member Becerra.
No discussion, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
None.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No discussion, thank you.
Thank you, and the chair has none. The discussion period is now closed. Madam Clerk, will you kindly take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the council's adopted staff recommendation. Moving on to item number 12, standard license agreement for building 685B by and between the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority and First Class Air Support LLC. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item is effectively extending a relationship we have with a company called First Class Air Support that has been a tenant since 2018 in the subject facilities. My understanding is that they've been occupying these facilities using a license agreement, which is the same agreement that's being proposed here for 1 year. And after that 1 year, this item has a series of 6 months extensions. So with that, the author on the item is your airport director, Mr. Eric Ray. Mr. Ray is not with us this evening, so to the extent there's any detailed questions or comments, I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, the recommendation, please.
That the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board of Directors approve entering into a standard license agreement for Building 685B by and between the SCLAA and First Class Air Support LLC, and authorize the airport director to execute said agreement and adopt resolution SCLAA 21-010, amending the 2021-2022 budget, increasing revenue in Fund 450 by $71,547.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to technical questions, beginning with Member Becerra.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, I heard Mr. Metzler say that this is an extension that we've continued to have with this relationship. It's not my understanding that comes across through with the reporting. So my following question is deemable to ask for that reason. So if we had a contract with this individual for 685B, do we not put who the vendor or the tenant is? Maybe I just missed it, or maybe I don't see it as first-class air support, but is that what it is?
That is what it is. It's the vendor, if you want to call it a vendor, it's actually the licensee in this particular case. The occupant of the building is First Class Air Support.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem
Welcome.
Irving.
No questions.
Thank you. And the chair has none and invites a motion from the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board
I'd
of
like to
Directors.
move it as recommended by staff.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Irving. Discussion on the pending motion, Member Gomez.
No, not at the moment.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
No.
Thank you. Chair has no discussion. The discussion period's closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board of Directors has adopted staff's recommendation. Moving on to item number 13, approval to purchase permanent water rights in the central sub area. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Your water district primarily pumps water from the Alto sub area and then treats that water to some extent and then distributes it to your local customers. It relies principally on what's called or commonly referred to as the Alto sub area, where we principally rely on free production allowance or water rights, as they're commonly referred to, as what governs us to actually draw water from the underground aquifer. As a owner of free production rights in the Alto subbasin, we do have an obligation to provide what's called makeup water responsibilities to the downstream central basin. And so on an annual basis, for everything that exceeds our free production rights, we have either a replacement or a makeup obligation. Replacement obligations can be made by purchasing or leasing additional water rights in the Alto sub area. Could also be through the State Water Project by buying actual water and having it percolated back into the ground. But we still have an obligation to maintain certain flows to the central sub-region. And so as a part of our overall calculation of water production, we on an annual basis do have makeup responsibilities to the central sub area. It's not uncommon for us to satisfy those obligations through lease on an annual basis of makeup water rights. It's been brought to our attention that permanent water rights in the central sub area have become available, and believing that the obligation to Centro is never going to end. This actually helps us offset some of the makeup responsibilities we have on an annual basis to Centro by purchasing these water rights. So with that, staff's recommending proceeding with this item and purchasing the permanent water rights. The author on this item is your Director of Public Works and Water, Mr. Doug Matthews. He's available for any detailed questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, will you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable Victorville Water District Board of Directors approve the purchase of permanent water rights by the Victorville Water District in the central sub-area of the Mojave Basin area from Jack and Mary Gaines Family Trust.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, moving on to technical questions for clarification, beginning with Member Gomez.
Yes, looking at the purchase, page 353, we're purchasing about $6,000, I presume, probably more. I don't know, maybe this is just a piecemeal of what I'm gathering. But the totality of my question just is the purchase of what we're going to vote on tonight. Does that somehow, did we manage to place it on the market and see if the value is there for us? Or did we do some type of analysis or cost benefit analysis or efficiency where we can see that that's amenable to our budget and it's something that we would like to do? I don't have the explanation in here and it's not like presumed, so that's why I'm asking this question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. So first of all, we don't place these rights on the market because we don't currently own these rights. These rights have been available on the market by private party. We do rely on an independent broker that we've worked with for quite some time to advise us on all lease and acquisition opportunities. And based upon that relationship, we rely heavily upon analyses provided by our broker, along with analyses we do on our own to determine what water is trading for in the open markets. Based upon those analyses, this price of $1,250 per acre foot is in accord with where the market sets for water rights in the central sub area. So we do believe it's a fair price, and that's why we're bringing it forward to the council for consideration.
Okay, so my next follow-up question to that, if it's a fair price, I know we look at, my analogy is when we're doing the water or the trash, I'm gonna say, we do, I think it's API, or there's some kind of index that we look at. So if we were to charge our water, our trash customers a certain amount of dollars, but we're going from Orange County, some people would say Orange County index is not comparable to the demographics of Victorville. So my question stems from there, because I'm not a water trader and I'm not too familiar with that, but I understand the concepts of if you have a relationship and the relationship says, yes, this is good, this is the value for it, you're not skimming off, our taxpayers, is what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, API, I think you're referencing a CPI, and that's not an applicable concept here. And perhaps the best way to answer the question is to share with you that the market, as we define it here, is for water rights in these sub areas, not some other aquifer and some distant off place that has no relationship to the Mojave Basin. We're analyzing water rights in the Mojave Basin, particularly the Alto and the Centro sub areas.
Thank you. And when did negotiations ensue regarding the water rights purchase, and who in the city of Victorville, like maybe the employees or the departments, were involved besides yourself?
The Department of Public Works and Water is the lead department over the entire water district. So that is the department that I've worked with and relied upon to help us identify this opportunity and others.
And then I saw the lawsuit of 1990. How does that relate to a possible approval of permanent water rights in the Centro sub area?
I believe the 1990. Doug, that's not the adjudication. The adjudication was 1996. I'm not sure what you're talking about for 1990.
Well, there's a lengthy, looks like a court document, which is addressing the Mojave Water Agency and the Barstow issue.
That's the 1996 adjudication. And so the concept of these water rights are baked into that larger adjudication.
Okay, and
Your time is up.
thank you.
Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No, I don't really have any questions. I recall having an extensive conversation about makeup water obligations. I think this is a good, what I would call a deal. So, a good purchase. So no, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Becerra.
Yes, I do. Mr. Metzler, we're basically buying water rights for our future, correct?
That is correct.
And this purchase is overseen by other jurisdictions that will make sure all the Ts were crossed and all the Is were dotted, correct?
Yes, the first, I guess the way to characterize it is the contracts that you're approving here tonight, or the contract that you're approving here tonight is basically by and among the Victorville Water District and private party. We do have the MWA or the Water Master signing off because they effectively are the record keeper, if you will, for water rights in the Mojave Basin.
That's what I was trying. I could remember their name. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. No further questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Member Becerra. All right, well, first and foremost, thank you for this staff report is incredible. It's a fabulous telling of the history of water rights, and it's a very complex subject, and I think the staff has done a wonderful job of breaking it down. I think big subject into something very understandable. So, you know, my understanding is that purchasing water rights is becoming more and more the thing throughout our country because water is becoming an increasingly prized commodity. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say.
And I like the analysis that was done in terms of this being able to give us some flexibility down the road. Do I recall, am I reading correctly, that this purchase would be in perpetuity, the water rights?
These would be water rights that you own, so they would carry forward in perpetuity. Yes.
Okay. And at this point, the rate is, I mean, this is going to be at least a savings in terms of the makeup water that would be purchased through MWA.
Over the long term. Yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Metzler. The chair now invites a motion from the Victorville Water District Board of Directors.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Member Becerra, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving, for the second. Discussion on the pending motion, Member Becerra.
You had said it very well put together, staff report.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No, I've already said what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Not at the moment, you're welcome.
Thank you. And the chair has no comments and the discussion period is closed. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Councilmember Becerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the Victorville Water District Board of Directors has adopted staff's recommendation. Moving on to item number 14, that I take it Mr. Waldron has been waiting with bated breath on. This is the consideration of a homeless shelter and housing services recovery program under the American Rescue Plan Act. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This is an item that's being brought forward, really given a lot of thought, consideration, and compassion towards our nonprofits that have worked so tirelessly with us, especially those that have been on the task force with us to help address our homelessness related concerns in the Victorville community. But before going into the detail of what we've provided for you here, I'd like Mr. Tony Camargo, he's our analyst in the city manager's office. He's the one that presented to you the first go around when we first got awarded the $34 million ARPA money and then identified the utility assistance program that we brought forward. But I wanted him to jump on and share some illustrations so you can kind of see visually from the higher level the money that we're dealing with, what it's been planned for, and then how this particular item is intended to be funded from that. So with that, Mr. Camargo, are you on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Metzler. Let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, and Mr. Camargo, just if I may, so each of the council members should have a hard copy of the presentation you're about to give.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Before you tonight is a presentation for the consideration of a homeless shelter and housing services recovery program that is funded through the American Rescue Plan Act, or also known as ARPA. As you are aware, the American Rescue Plan Act is a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus that was signed into law on March 11th, 2021. Victorville was allocated $33.5 million and received the first tranche on June 11th of this year in the amount of $16.7 million. The second tranche is expected to be received later next year in June in the same amount of $16.7 million. The United States Treasury states funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and that these monies must be spent by December 31st, 2026. On July 20th, Council approved the ARPA allocation plan, or also known as the Victorville Rescue Plan. This plan consists of 5 categories that are all eligible uses of funding under the interim final rule from the Treasury Department. These categories are housing and homelessness, community improvements, broadband, community and small business recovery, water, sewer, and storm drain. Up to now, Council has approved 2 ARPA expenditures. Both of these expenditures are in the community improvements category. The first expenditure was the utility bill assistance program that was a success within the community, receiving 1,986 applications and using $1.4 million of ARPA funds to bring residents' outstanding utility bills balanced to 0. The second approval was an expenditure in the purchase of 3 Type 1 engines for the fire department, which will arrive sometime next fall. The housing and homelessness category that was approved on July 20th provided 2 examples on how these funds could be used. The first being the Wellness Center and the second being outreach programs. Tonight's consideration is part of the outreach programs that would be allocated $2 million to fund the homeless shelter and housing services recovery program. This program has been developed to provide funding to nonprofits for homeless shelter and housing services that experienced a loss of revenue due to COVID-19. The nonprofits may be eligible to receive up to $100,000 per application. They must be an organization that provides temporary living arrangements benefiting Victorville residents experiencing homelessness, including congregate and non-congregate shelters and transitional housing. They must be a 501c3 organization with tax exempt status through the IRS and be a charitable organization through the state of California, California's Attorney General. Lastly, the organization is going to present a financial need due to the COVID-19 pandemic, illustrated by financial reports for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, and an operating budget for fiscal year 2022, including projected revenue and expenses. If approved, the program will be available beginning October 1st, 2021. Applications will be submitted through the city's website at victorvilleca.gov/nonprofithelp. The initial round of applications will be accepted through Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. Subsequent rounds may be necessary depending on the amount of applications received in the timeframe from October 1st through November 30th. And Madam Mayor, that completes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Camargo. All right, with that said, we're going to, first of all, before I take questions, Madam Clerk, will you read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council authorize staff to proceed with the ARPA Homeless Shelter and Housing Services Recovery Program.
Thank you. All right, so council members, we're going to move into questions on the staff report and/or the presentation. We're going to begin with Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
I don't have any questions. I'm very happy to see the way we're utilizing the ARPA funds though, but this is, for me, this is good. So thank you very much. I appreciated the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Becerra.
Kind of with Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Waldron, thank you very much for your work. It's commendable. Nothing further, ma'am.
Thank you. Member Gomez.
Yes. Before tonight's agenda, were there 4 more meetings that included the public to consider such appropriations? If not, what was the lead on this besides ARPA?
I believe how this discussion actually started was from
nonprofits actually reaching out to the city of Victorville for assistance. So based off their need, that's what caused the city and staff to look at developing this program.
And is there a hierarchy established for the application process once the requirements are met? Or what process will take place for the appropriations of these dollars?
So outlined in the staff report is a sample of the application. That application will be presented online, and it lists all the qualifications that the nonprofit must comply with and reach in order to receive these funds.
So it's my understanding that there's a limited amount of funds. So my question is pertinent to if there's a hierarchy or a priority after the requirements, and how would that be processed for the nonprofits to be able to have a piece of this? I'm just likening this to like the HUD appropriations of dollars, federal funding. Is that similar or not similar?
Well, the program, if approved, will be allocated $2 million. So also as outlined, each nonprofit can apply for each application is $100,000. So they can put multiple applications in as long as their revenue loss meets the criteria. So if they show $200,000 in revenue loss due to COVID-19, then they would have to put 2 applications in separately, but they would be able to obtain that $200,000 using the ARPA funds.
Okay, so it's not necessarily based on the need, it's based what they can show, and then that's where the application can either be approved or not approved?
Correct.
And Mr. Camargo, just to help speak to the question about the hierarchy, my understanding is that these funds are available on a first come, first served basis. So long as the applicant is eligible, that's how the applications will be reviewed and screened, not so much on a hierarchy basis. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, my next question is, what are we doing besides these general meetings to reach out to potential individuals or nonprofits that may need the funding, but are not close enough to the city or staff to realize that this is something that they can be applying because they're not in the loop?
Well, because this program hasn't been approved yet, there hasn't been any interaction with other nonprofits notifying them of this program yet. So once this program, and if it is approved, then the staff will, or the city will be able to put it on their social media, their press release, and outreach to the public through there.
Okay, and what are the requirements of the program in terms of repeat offenders, alcohol, drugs, and outstanding? Maybe that's beyond the scope of the question, but I'm a little worried that not only do we approve a program, but there's certain high level barriers to our homeless coming in, that even though it seems like we're helping them, we're creating a barrier. But maybe it's beyond the scope of this of the approval tonight. Is that the case? Would you think it is, Ms. Jones?
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay,
Thank you
I'm
for
not
asking,
gonna ask
Member
that
Gomez. It
question.
is, but I understand what you're trying to ask. But basically, this is a program to help those that have 501c3s who it's their job to reach out to those. It's barrier is not a part of this issue.
Yeah, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. All right, well, so I'm glad to hear that this is a first come, first served basis. That's as long as they can prove that they're qualified, they're approved for the application process. This is similar to what we did with the utility assistance program, isn't it?
That's correct.
And then that was a very successful program in terms of our outreach, right? We had amazing response straight away.
Yes, with numerous responses from the public thanking the city of the program.
Thank you. And do we expect the same kind of comparable response on something like this?
I would expect that, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the chair has no further questions and invites a motion from the council.
Motion to approve staff recommendation and.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
Second.
Thank you, Member Gomez. So now we're going to move into discussion on the pending motion, beginning with Member Becerra.
No questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
No.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem
Welcome.
Irving.
None, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. So just taking a quick moment to agree with my colleagues. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for our city and the people of our city. I think it's demonstrates once again that the city is the organization, I suppose, itself, but it's our entire community. And we're interested in leaning into the members of our city to provide the help that is within our ability to do. With that said, the discussion's closed. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Becerra,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the council has just adopted staff recommendation. All right, we're going to move on to item number 15, city manager reports. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. On Wednesday, September 29th, starting at 5 o'clock, the Planning Commission will be hosting its third land use element workshop to review the main points from prior land use workshops and discuss the Desert Gateway specific plan as a part of the city general plan update.
Mr. Metzler, can you hold for just a moment? Madam Clerk, will you please take note that Member Becerra has left the dais without,
Member Gomez.
my apologies.
Member Gomez,
It's
yes.
all right. Member Gomez has left the dais without the permission of the presiding officer and is considered absent at this point. Mr. Metzler.
So I'm sorry, yes. So very important planning commission workshop. Certainly would encourage all members of the public to attend. Also coming up on Saturday, October 23rd from 8 a.m. to noon, we have our Victorville Community Cleanup Day. It's one of our environmental programs. We're currently recruiting volunteers for this event. And volunteers can sign up at our website, victorvilleca.gov. And then we have our last concert series in the park this Friday. We'll be announcing the champion of the Victorville Sings Contest. It's been a great 3 weeks thus far. And so certainly welcome you all and the public out to join us for this final summertime event. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Moving on to item number 16, discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items. Member Becerra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gomez remains absent. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
None, thank you.
Thank you. And the chair has none at this point, although I am going to ask a question behind the scenes to see if a request is appropriate. Moving on to item number 17 is reports from city council members, beginning with Member Becerra. Thank you. Member Gomez has just joined the council.
You said reports.
Yes, item number 17.
Yeah, I would like to make a report. So September 22nd through the 24th is the California League of Cities event in Sacramento. A lot of elected officials will be there, so will I myself be there engaging. I'm working on a dissertation, so my dissertation will involve a lot of municipal officers. So I'm glad that I can make it tomorrow and meet all my colleagues up there that have the same mindset. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. And the chair has none at this point. So thank you, everyone. That concludes our business for this evening. It's a matter of housekeeping. Hold on one moment. Before I do that, I was going to make a motion after this, but I think I need to do it before. So the chair invites a motion from the council to adjourn this meeting to a meeting on Monday, September 27th at 5 p.m. to take up the issue of holding elections by district.
I'd like to move it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Thank you. And we are going to adjourn this meeting. We're going to plan on having this adjourned to Monday, September 27th. So that concludes our business for the evening. As a matter of housekeeping, all council members, staff, and audience members will kindly vacate council chambers in City Hall within 10 minutes. That's 8:18 p.m. so that these facilities may be cleaned and secured for the evening. Members of the public are not permitted behind the dais. Good evening, everyone.